You're listening to Shoe In, covering the ins and outs of all things footwear, from sneakers to heels, loafers to slippers, and every type of shoe in between. Brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear. And now your footwear insiders, Matt Priest and Andy Polk.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Shoe In Show. Hope you're doing well. Matt, how is everything in your world?
Andy, everything in my world is fantastic, man. We're like in the midst of the holiday season. We've had a really great year from an FDRA perspective. My family's healthy, so can't complain, man. The Lord's been good. So how about you?
That's good. Good to be grateful, my friend. Good to be grateful around this time of year as we look forward to seeing what happened for full year sales and what happens with our labor market issues and amidst all the chaos that we have and all the challenges. There's light at the end of the tunnel and a lot of things, and there's still a lot of positive things happening. So as we go through challenges, I always want to remind people, still a lot of positive stuff happening out there. There's a lot of heroes out there too that are putting their lives on the line every single day to help people in need. And I think sometimes we get sucked into the nightly news a little bit too much on if it bleeds, it leads, and just peeling it back just a little bit. I just wanted to open now just to say how grateful we were as a footwear association to represent the industry here in Washington, D.C., and to serve in a variety of ways to strengthen in any way we can, and especially on this podcast where we bring on footwear leaders across the industry, different product types, categories, consumer bases, to really talk about what they're seeing and what they're doing to help strengthen other people in the industry to kind of give back. So with that said, with a grateful heart, Matt, I will give you the next bit to introduce.
Awesome. Well, he's a dear friend of both of ours. He is a huge supporter of our industry and of FDRA. He's the treasurer of FDRA currently, so he knows where all the dollars and cents are. And that's Josue Solano, more importantly, the president and CEO of BBC International. Josue, you've been on the podcast before, so welcome back. It's always good to have repeat guests because that means you were willing to come back, which is rare. It's rare, but we're glad to have you on, my friend.
Well, I appreciate the invitation, and I appreciate the opportunity to join you guys again. I had a fun time the first time we did it. I remember laughing a ton and talking about interesting topics. I do want to thank the FDRA for everything you guys do for the industry. I know that as a private company, we would not have been able to navigate through all of these challenges and prepare ourselves for what's ahead without the help and the information and the guidance of the FDRA and its members. So we appreciate you guys in a great way. And I'm happy to participate and help however I can.
Man. Attitudes of gratitude are abundant. So it was a great episode. Let's start off with the bat. Something we're not grateful for necessarily is inflation, right? We're seeing a lot of inflationary pressure. What's driving it, and this is your world, Josue, is the increase in prices for kids' shoes. And you're Captain Kids Shoes. So talk to us about how inflation is changing the economics of your business right now.
Yeah, it's really something that's at the forefront of our minds. We always try to keep our prices as competitive as possible. Nobody ever wants to raise prices at retail. That's kind of like the four-letter word. But there are some realities out there that are happening. Our suppliers are facing tremendous pressure from a pricing perspective. Inflation is definitely out there. We're feeling the effects of that. And, our approach is usually the same no matter what the challenge, and that is to work with our suppliers in a partnership, try to find that happy medium between what their needs are to be able to get quality products out, and then also the balance on what we see on the other side so that we don't really hurt the consumer at the end of the day. So that's really the way we approach these types of issues. Inflation, in our opinion, is rising faster and costs are rising faster than what is being addressed at retail. So it's squeezing everybody in the middle. And, we're facing that right now.
Yeah. How is that impacting kind of the development cycles and the innovation and the work that your teams on the back end are kind of doing, right? Is it creating a squeeze where maybe you have these ideas that you guys could implement and bring to market, but you just can't right now because of the cost issues, especially with duty issues? we talk a lot about tariff engineering and changing little subtle ways of making shoes and constructing them to lower the duty rate. Is this at a point now where you're looking at your product lines and saying is this a time where you consolidate a little bit, or is it a time where you need to expand a little bit in terms of product offerings?
As merchants, we always strive to have lean lines, lean design lines, but we want to have the correct design lines. So we're never looking to spread our assortments really wide. We want to do the proper research so that when we do bring a line to the market, it's the right mix.
Right.
I don't think that the inflation is really hurting our ability to be creative or our willingness to be creative out there. I think what's happening is that the suppliers are facing tremendous pressure. What's happening is when we try to develop a new material, our material suppliers are asking for payment in advance much earlier than they were before from our factories. And that's putting pressure on the factories' willingness to go out and venture out. So in those cases, we have to support those initiatives. So where we're being innovative, we have to come to the table more from a financial front and really invest up front with our factory partners so that the suppliers will come to the table and do what they need to do. So I think the inflation is causing a lot of cash flow issues across the supply chain, and people are less willing to negotiate terms, and that's really putting a lot of pressure on our lines, on our product lines.
How in terms of, because over the last year we've seen a ton of stimulus money thrown out into the marketplace. Americans have a ton of money in their accounts. They also have a ton of debt on their credit card still. But we've seen this child tax credit actually go into people's wallets in real time instead of being added at the end of the tax cycle. In the tax year, you get a refund back. How has that kind of changed how you guys approach a business model? Because obviously working class families are getting the extra check, and that's it's a direct, we think, contributor. We see it in the numbers, contributor to people actually going and spending that money on basic needs like shoes. And is that helpful? And obviously huge challenges with price, huge challenges with the cost at the factory, but still that demand, it seems to continue to churn more and more in the marketplace. Are you guys seeing that too?
Yeah, I think the dollars that are in the consumer's hands and their lack of ability to travel the way they would normally do so is stimulating consumer spending, and it's stimulating consumer spending in footwear, which is fantastic. A lot of companies' sales are up, which is great, and I think it's giving the retailers the opportunity that we need to inch up prices. So if you're a luxury brand, you're probably winning in a big way because you have the ability to raise your prices. Consumers are going to pay for the luxury, and you're probably booking tremendous margins in 2021. Will that continue in 22? Probably not. In my view, those margins will probably come down. But in my experience, from what I'm seeing, retailers have a weaker markdown cadence right now because they don't have to. So they're probably ringing the register from a margin perspective, despite some of the inflation. I think that's going to start to bleed off. The offset to all of this consumer spending from a negative perspective is the transportation crisis. So we have all of this demand, consumers are spending, and the shelves are empty. We can't get the products in. We've all gone online and purchased something and it says it's back ordered. It's not going to be in for 4 weeks. And then it shows up next week and you're like pleasantly surprised. It's because they don't really know when their merchandise is coming in either. So sales are up. I believe retail margins are up in the short run. But it's all about getting your products into your retailers' hands and on the shelf, so we can really ring the register as an industry.
Now, you've cut your teeth, Josue, in the industry for a long time, and you've spent weeks of your life, months of your life in Asia, right? Finding product, sourcing product, and getting that product to the U.S. marketplace. What's the current lay of the land? We know what's happening in the port, and I think we'll get back to it in just a minute. But before we kind of make our way across the ocean within the life of a pair of shoes, what's going on the Asia side that you're seeing? We hear about these kind of targeted shutdowns based on COVID outbreaks here and there. on our weekly call just yesterday, someone mentioned that they're hearing the northern part of Vietnam, there might be some additional shutdowns. So how, as someone who's one of the largest importers of children's footwear in the country, how are you navigating the uncertainty that COVID has brought to the sourcing dynamic that is, footwear production in the East?
It's been very difficult. It's been very challenging, and we spend a lot of time every day on that. From a China perspective, it's almost a good and the bad. When a COVID case pops up in a region, the government, it could be 1 or 2 or 3 cases. And you think about their population, 1 or 2 or 3 cases in America might be ignored, but they don't ignore it. They swoop right in and they just attack that region. They really have a super aggressive approach to preventing a spread. And they've shut down regions, no trucks in, no trucks out. And it tests 100,000 people the very next day. So in some cases, from a supply chain perspective, that might look really scary. You have an outbreak in any random city, and that's their behavior. But from my vantage point, it's actually really good because they're going in there, they're preventing the spread, and you wake up a week or 2 weeks later, and yes, you might be behind a couple of weeks, but all of a sudden it's cleaned up and the roads are open and everything's flowing again. So what I've seen from the China front is a very aggressive and controlled approach. It is scary when COVID pops up in an area where we have a high concentration of factories, and you just have to grin and bear it. But once they get it cleaned up, you're back in business again, and it usually happens within 14 to 21 days. On the Vietnam side, they're struggling a lot more, as we've witnessed with the shutdown of pretty much the entire country. Northern Vietnam has been relatively okay. Ho Chi Minh City and that area in the south has been really, really bad. But they're a lot less aggressive. And part of it is, I believe, that they just don't have enough vaccines, and we're doing our parts to try to get them some more. But that's a little bit more of a scarier challenge as it relates to Vietnam and some of the other countries outside of China.
Now that we depart the production area, our September import numbers were the biggest September in history. And we've been hearing anecdotally from the retail perspective is that, to your point, a lot of retailers didn't know when product was arriving. They were trying to communicate the delays to the consumer base, unknowing when the product would actually arrive. And September was really difficult. But because of those import numbers, October and now November, more and more product is coming through. And so are you, as someone who imports product trying to deliver to the retail side, is that your experience as well? Did you bring in a ton of stuff that dislodged in September? Or you still have a lot of stuff waiting in the wings to get unloaded and off to the retail sector?
A little bit of both. I would say that if you take September, October, and November and combine the 3 months, we're way behind where we should be in terms of what we expected to import for the holiday period. And, supply chains, they're just taking a lot longer. They're not very organized out there on the West Coast. I know President Biden flew out there and made the announcement that the ports are going to open 24/7, and that's all good. But I think I don't think that that's going to help, because if the warehouses don't also open 24/7, and if you don't have the rest of the supply chain working on the same cadence, you're not really doing anything. You can unload a lot of containers. There's no space for them. So I think there's a lot of rhetoric out there about what's being done, but at the end of the day, just breaking it down like I normally do, they're in a lot of trouble. And in aggregate for the 3 months, I don't think that we as a country have brought in as many goods as we expected to bring in for this period.
So I guess the big question then is, when are the drones that you're going to send over there to get your product off the ship and just bring it straight over to your warehouse? When does that occur? What's the capital outlay you guys are investing into the drones to make that happen?
I would have thought that a guy like Jeff Bezos would have had this all figured out for everybody. I mean, he's sending people up to space already.
Yeah.
Why can't we get shoes across the border and all these vessels to berth, for heaven's sakes?
Yeah, he skipped right over the drones and went straight to the rockets, right? He skipped a step. So maybe he's smarter, or maybe not. But yeah, obviously when we look at that, I think we all realize the antiquated supply chains that we've had, and we've been fortunate that there have been kinks here and there but we've never seen kinks across everything, right? And breaks and I mean, we're seeing it in aging infrastructure with power issues. We're seeing it with our supply chain. So thank goodness we saw recently Congress actually work together in a bipartisan fashion to pass an infrastructure bill to provide more money, but that's going forward, obviously, and it may not be enough. They may have to do another one. But as we continue to look at this, from your perspective, if there's nothing going to change in the next year in terms of the congestion and the time issues and all that, does that mean that you have to elongate your development cycles and start sooner than ever? And does that, I guess, build in more risk? Because you said succinctly at the very beginning, it's like we want to make sure we make the right shoe that's going to sell, right? So how do you manage that risk of saying we got to start earlier than ever, perhaps? How does that work? I mean, it seems very.
It's a great question, Andy. We've actually done that. We work on production calendars. BBC's on a 365-day calendar to deliver a season. And the first thing we did, we kept getting mixed information from the West Coast. They kind of thought it was going to be cleared up by August of 2021. Then they said February of 2022. Now they're saying, even beyond back to school 2022.
Yeah.
So after we started getting that inconsistent information, we went back to our production calendars and we tried to advance everything that we could. We worked with our key retailers and our partners. We pre-lined earlier. We brought them here into our office wherever possible, and they stepped up, and we advanced our calendar by about 45 days, and then we just started building in some of this lag time that you have from a transportation perspective, and we just reconfigured our calendars, and it put us in a really good position. One of the things we're struggling with right now, just in full transparency for the sake of everybody listening, is that, we're getting ready to go into the Fanny Show in December. And that's typically the season where you would sell fall 2022. But in reality, based on the timing of Chinese New Year, the fact that material suppliers are closing even earlier than usual, we really should be placing fall now in November. And some of the retailers just aren't ready to do that. BBC's ready to go. But they're saying, well, we're going to see you guys, but we will not have had a chance to see the others. And therefore, we can't really make those merchandising decisions to assort our stores correctly. And so that's one of the things that we're facing just today. We're having a meeting today to discuss that because material suppliers are closing earlier as China faces, this migration of people that they have going back for the Chinese New Year holiday. They're trying to figure out the timing of how to manage that as well. And so that's causing disruption in terms of what we would normally expect with the delays there. And the answer is we just have to be as early as possible with our retailers, with our purchases, and we have to be light and we have to be right.
That's always been your mantra, though, Josue. I can remember being around the board table at the Fannie board meetings prior to FDRA acquiring Fannie, and we were talking about the cadence of when the show would take place, and this publishing the week of the show in the December show. But you were always a proponent to have it come after the Thanksgiving Day holiday because you wanted that one extra week to engage with the factory base to give that breathing room. And now that's been blown out of the water. You need to be doing it like multiple weeks before that. So I don't envy the position you're in, but it sounds like you're doing everything you can to be innovative. My question for you is less than a year from now, as you're sitting in the summer and you're thinking about kind of, how are you going to comp against all that's going on right now? How are you going to forecast what the demand will be? You mentioned that you thought it will, we'll kind of come off our highs here soon from a demand perspective. So as we kind of make our way through the back half of 22, how on earth does a buyer, your customer, make decisions on what the assortment should look like and how many units they should have on hand to sell to a consumer? Not knowing that this is an outlier year, 21, 20 was an outlier year for sure. What's 22 going to be like?
Well, that's why they're professional buyers. I mean, I was on that side for the large part of my first part of my career, and that's what they do every day. They forecast, a year out, 6 months out, and then even monthly, and they make adjustments. What we're seeing is that we sell to almost every retailer in America, and we're seeing that different retailers are in different positions even today. Some have a lot of merchandise on the shelves, and I have shoes ready to ship to them now, and they're saying, oh, I'm okay. And some are saying, how fast can you get me product into my shelves? So I think it's going to be a retailer by retailer decision. I think that there are some general themes which, we as the part of the FDRA, should be pushing out to our members about what we're seeing. If there's not additional stimulus money, what could those ramifications be in terms of how consumers behave? If the transportation crisis does clear up by August, what does that mean in terms of what you have on order? But I think that I always give the majority of the credit to the retailers. They're super smart. They know what they're doing. I think what they'll do is they'll do what they always do. They'll say 2021 is going to land here. What are we forecasting? Are we up 5%, 10%, or are we down 5 or 10%? And they merchandise accordingly. And they roll that into what their inventory positions are and what their forecasts are going to be once they approach that timetable.
Let me give just some advice here, Josue, that you probably won't.
Please.
My guess is you might want to import all white canvas upper sneakers and then sell a Sharpie with it in different colors. The kind that gets on the walls that makes the parents really upset, because that can only build better branding and make them have a real feel for your company. Maybe not the feeling that you want, but it really would create, this creativity where you can just import the same thing over and over and see what happens. I don't know. Again, take it or leave it. That's just my guess.
Thanks, Andy. I might create a position in my company called designer strategist. I might consider you for that position.
My guess would be you would hire me, bring me in, I would give my presentation, and then you would summarily fire me into scaring the staff into listening to what you want. So clever you. Matt tried that, but I'm still here.
You can always come back after cutting your teeth over at BBC's.
Yeah, I just changed my LinkedIn profile for 5 minutes. That's it. So, as we kind of wrap up our conversation, I'm also interested in e-commerce and kids' shoes. We saw during the pandemic, people had to buy online. I think, even as I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, you want to, oftentimes go in and get them remeasured and refitted. And so brick and mortar is where it's at, because you want to get the right size and the right fit for your kids. But even then, even more and more people are considering, because of not just COVID, but convenience of buying online and have it shipped to your house. Hopefully they don't ship it back, right? The returns. But as you guys look at this and start working with retail partners, are you guys having to change your warehousing strategy around not just holding it and sending it to brick and mortar, but drop shipping for retailers? How are you guys looking at that going forward? Is that something you're having to consider and strategize around?
We've been doing drop ship for several years at BBC, and we were very early on that trend with our retail partners, so we have a lot of experience there. Retailers are putting less in their stores right now, and they're testing more online. So when you come out with something that's new and innovative, a buyer now has a testing platform, which is their .com platform. As far as buying shoes online, whether you're in kids or adult, because we sell both in a big way, it is difficult to sell footwear online as a sized item. But there's a lot of really good technology out there now for consumers to go in and really figure out what their size is. Mm-hmm. Some companies do it better than others. And consumers typically buy 2 or 3 pairs of shoes in different half sizes, and then they send them back. It's just the nature of the beast. And you have to have that built into your margin structure and your profitability and your warehousing operational to expect it. So I think that the pandemic has really helped the cause for online. People were forced to buy online. You go to the stores now and you find an empty shelf and you realize you just wasted an hour of your time driving there to find nothing. So I think this pandemic is going to help direct to consumer from an online basis, and I think we're ready for it.
That's awesome. Well, if I've learned anything knowing you for 13 years, Josue, you are ready for just about anything. And I want to thank you for coming on Shoe and Show again. And maybe a year from now, we'll check in and see kind of where things landed and if the supply chain crisis really did end in 22, and we might still be in the middle of it. I'll bite my tongue, but
we'll be able to tell by looking at people's hair and how gray they've become during the chaos, right? Like Moses off the mountain.
Well, Josue's rocking an awesome, sweet beard, so it might be grayer a year from now.
Yeah, it's definitely a salt and pepper look now, and last year it wasn't. So.
Thanks, COVID.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, well, folks,
but I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem, Josue. Folks, this has been the Shoe In Show. We are nearing 300 episodes. It's hard to believe Andy and I have been doing this for over 5 years. When I was driving to the studio on day one, I literally said to myself, what are we going to talk about for a podcast?
We still don't know.
But nevertheless, it has been a joy and privilege to host this with Andy and have so many great guests like Josue, like Dr. Campbell, who's since passed, and so many others. And we are glad that you listen. You can check out all the episodes in our catalog at shoeinshow.com or download us at anywhere that you can find podcasts. You can also like us within iTunes. We only accept 5 stars. All other stars get thrown out. So make sure you select the 5-star button and pass it on to your friends. If you want to be on Shoe In, or you want to like put a note forward, you can go to shoeinshow.com, and there's a little icon in the lower left-hand corner. That's a little mic, and you can record some kind of audio for us. And if it's good enough, we might play it. We still haven't gotten one that's good enough, but nevertheless, you just never know. But in the meantime, on behalf of Andy, Josue, and Blake, our producer, have a great rest of your holiday season. And until next time, Shoe In Show is out.
Shoe In has been brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear. For information about FDRA, visit fdra.org.